In this episode, I want to bring the topic of abuse to the podcast. So for anyone who's experienced abuse of any kind, this is a trigger warning to take care of yourself and to feel free to switch off if this is kind of like triggering you. Exercise self-care here. For me, I want to talk about specifically childhood sexual abuse. Now, for the last few years, I've been talking sporadically about the fact that I was abused at the age of 5, sexually abused at the age of 5. And I mentioned it in episode 8 of Honest Tea Talk. Now, if you don't know about Honest Tea Talk, girl, where you been? I'm joking. No. Honest Tea Talk is a show hosted by myself and my two good friends, Arlia Qadri and Sumaya Hassan, and we kind of just talk about real issues that are pertinent to the Muslim women, and also the Muslim community at large. And we just bring random topics that we feel are really important for us to bring to the table and to talk about. Often those that people don't want to talk about and are taboo and people shun. Now, just as a disclaimer, I'm sat in my car as I'm recording this, so if you'd hear doors slamming, trucks driving past, that is what you're hearing. So I'm not gonna sugarcoat it or edit it out. It's just real, innit? So the topic of abuse, I get loads of questions about my experience. I get loads of questions about how I've made it out. I've had loads of questions about what I've done, my choices, etc., etc. And I thought, okay, let's just bring it to the podcast so that I can just say it. And if anyone asks me, I can just direct them to the episode. So with regards to my experience, I was sexually abused by someone my family knew very, very well and trusted deeply. And and it was when I was 5 and he was 19. I get a lot of questions about my choice to not out him. My choice to not out him. It's very much a personal choice, very, very much a personal choice. And it's something, when people are on the outside of the abuse experience, it's very easy to just say, expose your perpetrator, let the world know what they're up to, save other victims from the experience. You've got a duty to do that. And honestly, I can say, as someone who has been through abuse and someone who did not tell her family and kept it to herself, it is not as simple as just outing your abuser. And so if you are on the outside, if anyone's on the outside who has not experienced abuse, it would be really useful to not put a victim in the position that they must, otherwise they're failing in some sort of way. It's so damaging. It's detrimental to their healing also to feel forced if they are not ready, if they feel for whatever reason that they don't even want to. That's a choice and that's a right that they have. And it doesn't make someone any better or any worse just because they choose to or not to out their abuse. And for me personally, there was so much contemplation, so much thought, and so much consideration that went into just thinking about the decision to or to not out my abuser. And the thing is, I do recognize that my abuse experience actually didn't crush me. It didn't kill me. It didn't, I believe it enhanced my life in terms of the strength that I now embody because of having gone through that experience. I believe that it has really strengthened me and allowed me to show up in a different way because of my experience. And so when I was thinking about possibly outing my abuser, I had to kind of really consider my intentions, because I think, as someone who believes that it strengthened me, outing him would have actually just been something for my ego. If I'm completely honest, it would have been something for my ego. Like, I'm going to out you, I'm going to ruin your life because I can. I don't believe that my experience ruined mine, but being in the position that I am, I have the power, in inverted commas, to ruin his, because of the fact that I was the victim and he was a perpetrator. But that's not how I don't roll to just do things out of ego, just to harm someone just because I can. Yes, he did me wrong. He violated my right as a child. I accept that and I know that. As an adult now, do I just do it because I can? And it was for me to, and I really questioned myself, and I came to the conclusion that yes, I can, but I actually don't want to. I can ruin his life if I want to, but I choose not to. And this is a choice that everyone has to kind of think about. And yes, I understand the importance of protecting potential other victims and things like that, and I do say it's very much a personal choice depending on the circumstances and the whole host of things to consider when it comes to possibly outing or not outing an abuser. Now, people ask me a lot about how I've moved on and telling parents and telling family, and like I mentioned, I didn't tell my parents until much later in my adult life. So my mum, I told her in my late 20s, and my father in my early 30s. And both of those instances where I did tell them, it was more like off the cuff rather than planned. I'm going to tell them today is the day. And their reaction and their response has been quite supportive. Alhamdulillah, thank God, it has been supportive. There wasn't the experience that I hear from so many other victims that the parents shun them, they put them down, they blame them, they shame them. I didn't have that experience at all, alhamdulillah, and I'm really thankful to God for that. But it did come as a shock, especially because they know him, trusted him, like my father trusted him deeply and loved him deeply actually. So it was really, really quite heartbreaking for my dad to deal with, but it felt so freeing. Because imagine, like my parents coming across social media posts or whatever, and they don't know and they're finding out that way. I did not want them to find out that way. I did not want them to find out via a social media post. I feel like, nah, I couldn't do that to them. And so it took a lot of, it took a lot to get to a point where I felt like I was comfortable to tell my parents. And I think I held off telling them because I didn't know how they would respond. But I think there was also a level of, what's the point? So much time has passed. You were 5. Now you're in your 20s, 30s. What's the point? Like, what good is it going to serve? And in many ways, I felt like they had a right to know that this happened to their child, and especially for my father, because he knew him and loved him, like knows him and loved him so deeply. I wanted him to know that this is the history behind this person, in terms of this is my experience with them and things like that. So that's what that's where I came from in telling my parents. I know many women and men are in a position where they don't want to tell their parents, or they're struggling with the idea of telling their parents. And I really do say that it is up to you to make the best decision for you, because it is really your experience. It is something that you have experienced, and maybe it will serve you to tell your parents. Maybe it won't serve you to tell your parents. And as you're listening to this, if anyone's listening to this who has experienced it, I don't want you to feel like, I want you to feel like it's okay. It's okay to own your experience, and it's okay to decide who you share that with and who you don't. And just because I'm sharing it publicly, it doesn't mean that you have to. You have a choice to keep it to yourself or to share it with those you love, or to not share it with those you love. You have absolute autonomy to make that choice and make that decision, and to know that it's okay. It's okay. For anyone who's in that position, I do want you to know that, like anyone who's experienced it, it's really important to go on the healing journey. And like I said, for me, my experience didn't crush me and didn't destroy me. Alhamdulillah, all praise is due to God, who allowed me to use it to fuel me, rather than use it to just really, I don't know the term that I want to use, but just to be crushed by it rather than to rise from it. I'm glad and I'm grateful for the fact that I didn't have a crushing experience from it. And I know people have flashbacks and they have post-traumatic stress disorder from their abuse and things like that. And if you are experiencing that, please get help. It's so vital. Whether you want to tell your family or not, get the help. Get the help to heal, because it can affect your future relationships. It can affect your ability to love, your ability to trust, your ability to really be vulnerable, to be yourself, to have connected relationships. And that's intimate and otherwise. Relationships with people. I really believe it's important to go on that journey, to seek the help. get a counselor, get a therapist, get a psychotherapist, get a psychologist, just do something to go on your healing journey, to allow yourself to really kind of see that, yes, this happened to me. No, it wasn't my fault. Yes, that person is an idiot and a fool and the perpetrator, and they violated me, and I can heal from this. And there are wounds. Sometimes those wounds are so unconscious you don't recognize that they're playing out in your relationships and experiences that you're having. But know that if you have been through something, it's so, like, abuse is so important for you to go on that healing journey, so that if there are any fragmented parts in you, that you can just become whole again, and you can live from that wholesome, healed place rather than that bleeding, wounded place. Yes, healing doesn't take away from the fact that you have experienced something. It doesn't erase your experience. But if you find that, whether it's impacting you or not, whether you feel like it's impacting you or not, I do advocate strongly that you see someone and get some therapy, get some counseling, get something, just so that you can know that, yes, this part of my life, it is resolved. I have experienced this, and I am on the side of victor rather than victim. And my heart goes out to anyone who has experienced abuse of any kind, and more so childhood sexual abuse, because I know how scarring it can be, how it can hold you back in many, many ways if you allow it to. And it's really easy to just say, yeah, you stop being a victim and, reclaim your power. Yes, okay, yes, I deeply believe that. But on many levels, I know of how empowering the healing journey and process is, and how vital it is from the perspective of a victim. And so if you have experienced therapy, if you've experienced abuse, get the help. Seek someone out that you trust, that you know can help you, and get the help, rather than suffering in silence, rather than allowing yourself to relive it, rather than feeling that you're dirty, rather than feeling ashamed, rather than feeling that you were at fault. Whatever their experience was, get some help. I implore you, so that you can heal, and the people you love will have a wholesome, healed version of you, and that just all the goodness that comes from healing is one that you and the ones you love will experience. I'm sure that there'll be some questions and some comments about this particular episode, and I'm open to them. Of course, I have very specifically not gone into my experience so much, because I feel that it will reveal the identity of the person who abused me. And like I said, I'm not out to reveal him for many, many reasons. So if there are any particular questions about that, then I ain't gonna answer them. But if I do get loads of questions that I feel like I can answer in a manner that will be useful, then I will absolutely create another episode and record another episode to answer those questions and to kind of just go through those things. I pray that this is useful, and that through it gives you strength and hope, and to know that you aren't alone. You aren't alone. You aren't alone. And I also hope that it helps you to realize that you can rise. You can rise from this. You can be a victor, and you can use your experience to fuel you towards greatness, fuel you towards shining your light, rather than allowing it to be dimmed by your experience. Sending you lots of love, and see you in the next episode, inshallah, God willing.